fortunate that I've been able to gather people who are just so competent about me. I've mentioned names of Pauline Corley, who was a business management consultant in the States, who became an absolute fanatic about the physiotherapy treatments that were available, and why weren't they available in America like they had been, she'd seen here. We'd met her quite accidentally because she was a visitor to Whakatane and I had treated her, and she said to her, look, I've never had treatment like this before. And I said, well, I've just come back from the Canary Islands where a group of people have been teaching these methods. And she said, well, I'm fascinated, she said, because we haven't got anything like that in the States. She said, what would you consider? And I said, well, what we've got to do is try and spread the message throughout the world that this is a very effective method of treating people, is with gentle manual therapy techniques. We don't need what we would tend to think to be violent chiropractic techniques, but with simple mobilizations followed up ultimately by an accessory range of movement, we can probably show the world that treatments can be most effective. She also teamed up with a lady that I had here in Whakatane, who was my full-time secretary, because I was secretary of NZMTA, secretary of IFOMT, had business while I was a counsellor. I was also on the hospital board. We had about 4 practices running. I used to travel to Karao every day and treat patients at Karao. That was a branch practice. We had 3 or 4 physiotherapists working in our town practice here. We had a branch in Apariki. So the practices were thriving. I was very fortunate to have wonderful staff. Stancy Williams, or quite a number of people that worked in the practice in Whakatane. And therefore I was able to take some time off and travel and do these international things that normally wouldn't have been possible. Diana McKee was my secretary, and she was so loyal and worked for 20 or 25 years and would prepare all the documents, prepare all the conference proceedings, prepare all the minutes and agendas for the various meetings of the organisations, so that I had little input other than to see that our standards weren't diluted in any way. And I find satisfaction in my life that we've seen a profession which wasn't recognised in the early days, now fully recognisable and admired by many other countries in the world, and accepted naturally quite naturally by the medical profession of New Zealand. The follow-up of all this is that I still had that wonderment about how come we had these muscle imbalances, that it seems strange that there should be something that created so much imbalance. And my eyes had been opened by Professor Yanda, because now we found that some of those muscles were naturally tight, some were naturally slack. And so my appetite was whetted, and it so happened that a doctor, or Professor Osa Jackson, came to Australia when I was there as an examiner, and I did a 5-day course with her. She was a gerontologist, and the subject of the course was the ageing of the human body. Not ageing of the mind with Alzheimer's and all that sort of thing, but the actual physical ageing of the body. Now that interested me. I didn't want to age, and if there's anything she could suggest that stopped you from aging, that's marvellous. Anyway, there were about 40 people at this course that she ran in Sydney. There were orthopaedic surgeons, there were all types of medical people present. And she opened the conference by saying, gentlemen, because there were mainly men at this conference. There was lots of ladies, but she said, I address this. Ladies and gentlemen, where is it first apparent in the human body that you can see ageing? Well, I'd never thought of that. White hairs, I suppose, or a weight-bearing joint or something, or Whereabouts can you see it first, she said. Give you a clue, she said. The aging process is produced by gravity. Gravity causes us to age. It's because we're upright that we tend to age. All right, that opened another school of thought. Hadn't thought about it. So I still didn't have the answer. Whereabouts in the body, at one particular level of the body, do you find that aging takes place? Well, where is it apparent? She said, okay, gravity does it. I'll give you a clue. When you go to the high school, where do you see the students walking around? Where can you see they're starting to age at the age of 12 to 15? Oh, she said, okay, I give in. She said, it's at the level of a girl's bra strap that the aging process of the human body starts first. That's where gravity first starts to impinge on people. They drop forward into a kyphosis. That's followed by an involuntary lordosis of the neck, a levelling of the eyes, and then that's where the aging process starts. She said, you've got to look at the level of a girl's bra strap for the first signs of aging. She said that's the first place that subjects suffer from osteoporosis. And that's because there's limitation of movement. There's no circulation going through the body to the bone because there's not the function there, and that's where osteoporosis takes place. So she said that's where we'll concentrate on for the first few days, and that's what she did. She taught us to test segmental motion of the dorsal spine, and bearing in mind what the segmental block was in comparison to what the neck function was. And so she had the mobile skeleton and said that's the typical posture with a bra strap. And she said the compensation is the levelling of the eyes, and we wonder why we start to get limitation of rotation. She said with the spine upright, with the discs doing this stuff, the spine turns, but it turns all the way down to dorsal 7 for full rotation. If you block that, then you'll only get rotation for half the distance. So that opened up a whole new school of thought as far as I was concerned, that from now on, instead of just treating an AA joint, I was going to have to look at the whole function of the spine rather than just one segment. But she was wonderful from the point of view that she explained the aging of a human body. Right. Wonderful from the point of view that she said that people can do their own self-mobilisations on a Wheatie bag on the floor. They just lie on the floor and do their own mobilisations. She said you also should be able to do your shoulder girdle mobilisations and stop yourself from aging.